Hello, YouTube, Mr. Mags here. Today, we will be asking the question, what if every Pokemon region had a grass-type gym leader? Now, this is the second of the starter typings that I've done in this video series. However, unlike with fire, there is actually a very plentiful amount of grass types to choose from, whereas fire had very few options outside of the starters in any given region. They actually did in any given region create a pretty good amount of grass types, which made creating teams for these gym leaders a lot of fun. So let's jump right into it. First, starting off with the criteria for how I develop these teams. The gym leader team and position will be chosen based on the grass Pokemon native to the region. So I'll be looking specifically at all of the grass types native to any given region and deciding which placement that gym should go. A lot of other videos like this say, oh, here are the 4 or 5 best Pokemon of any given type. There's your eighth gym. You can work backwards from there. I wanted to make choices. I wanted to specifically say, here are the grass types. I think that would make, the fifth gym in Hoenn, for example. That's not what I did, but that's, for example. There will be times when I do make multiple gyms. The vast majority of those are where I do make one that is the eighth gym, but just to keep myself creative, I also make one that is earlier as well. Next, I'll be using the version of the region with the most options, Platinum for Sinnoh, Black and White 2 for Unova, etc. Although, like I said up front, there are so many grass type options that never really matter outside of one kind of instance for where we need Platinum Pokemon for Sinnoh. I will not be reusing aces of any canon, grass type gym leaders, or Elite Four members in the region unless necessary. However, Pokemon from all other major trainers are fair game. So, for example, in Hoenn, once again, Sydney's Shiftry and Cacturn would be fair game because they are dark types. However, in Sinnoh, Roserade would not be an option since that was Gardenia's ace. One little caveat to this, um, for Erica specifically, I decided to essentially just base what this criteria here, base it solely off of her red and blue team, where her kind of dual aces are Victory Bell and Vileplume. Because if I was going off of every team she's ever had, she actually had 4 different Pokemon that are kind of her ace, Victory Bell, Vileplume, and then in yellow she had Weepinbell and Gloom. I decided that would take away too many options off the board. So I just decided not to use Victory Bell and Vileplume, whereas every other grass type is available. But luckily, Gen 1 had so many options that didn't really matter. And lastly, the gym leader's overall strength will be based on the canon gym leaders in the region in question, if not slightly stronger. And this will kind of go by case basis, but specifically, I tried to keep the gym leader's strength about the same average base stat total as the gym leader that actually exists in that region in that position. But for gym leaders in regions like Unova and Kalos, I did, I may up the levels and up the number of Pokemon, but again, that'll be by case basis. Okay, starting off with Kanto. I think this works well as the fifth gym with Weepinbell, Tangela, Parasect, and Exeggutor. As I said up front, I'm not considering Weepinbell as Erica's ace in yellow, but I think it works very well here as one of this last's Pokemon here. And Exeggutor is one of those Pokemon that I'm kind of surprised it wasn't really an ace of anybody in Kanto. Like it was obviously on the rivals final champion team, but throughout the entire rest of the game was just an execute. Sabrina, nor Erica had one. So I really wanted to spotlight just how cool and how good Exeggutor is by making it the ace of this fifth gym here. But I also am kind of headcanoning this gym being more of a midpoint between the fourth and sixth gym in Kanto, because typically the fifth and sixth gym have the same level cap of 43. So I'm kind of headcanon this as being somewhere in the high 30s just to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Whereas Executor, I think, could easily work as the ace of a sixth gem. The rest of her team isn't the best. Especially since Parasect has so many weaknesses, and the other two, they're fine Pokemon, but they're just not, they're not nearly as strong as even something like Muck from Koga's normal team. Now for Johto, I think this works well as a fourth gym with Sunflora, Gloom, and Jumpluff. I picked Gloom specifically over Blossom for kind of two reasons. One, just for type variety's sake. We already had a pure grass, a grass flying, so I wanted another other type in there, so I threw one that is grass poison. But Gloom does evolve into Blossom, who is a Gen 2 Pokemon. However, Blossom is kind of technically the ace of Erica in the Kanto post game of Johto. So I wasn't exactly sure how to balance that. I don't really know if I've taken that into account before, but this time specifically, mainly just for type variety purposes, I put Gloom instead of Blossom. But I still think this makes for a pretty solid fourth gem. I don't think Jumpluff is necessarily like the strongest, most imposing ace, even of a fourth gym. But it is one of those Pokemon that is so fast, it can know so many just annoying moves. It could potentially be pretty hard to take down because it's going to be faster than most things you have, even if you are even like a little higher level than it. It's probably going to outspeed you, put you to sleep, hit you with the leech seed, and just kind of chip you down over time. Whereas something like Morty's Gengar is going to be, firing off strong Shadow Balls and Dream Eaters and stuff. Jump Off is just going to be a little more annoying to take out. Next up, Hoenn. Now, Hoenn, I am genuinely surprised that Hoenn did not have a grass specialist throughout the entire region. There are so many just interesting grass types in Hoenn, and a lot of them do get used throughout. Ludicolo is on Wallace's team and Emerald. Like I said before, Shiftry and Cacturne are on Sydney's team. Your rival uses, well, should have Berloom, but the end really it's only a Shroomish. Um, but yeah, like stuff like Breloom and Roselia and even Tropius is actually used on the rivals team in Emerald. So every grass type, you know, is used quite a bit kind of throughout the region, whether it be on major trainers or just random trainers throughout. But it just felt, for me, it felt so right for there to be a third gym in Hoenn that is the grass gym. Especially considering in Ruby and Sapphire, the electric gym we got for the third gym didn't have any Gen 3 Pokemon, whereas I feel it right for the taking for Breloom to be the ace of the third gym there. That's right after the level where Breloom evolves anyway. Then you can have Cacnea and Roselia. I chose those two Pokemon again just to have some type variety, and also Cacnea specifically. I really like it when a gym leader has Pokemon that the player has no access to yet. They wouldn't even have seen that yet. No trainer up to that point would have this Pokemon, and they wouldn't even be able to see it until pretty late after. You won't even be able to get to the desert until after the fourth gym. And Roselia, it is a little more common throughout the region. There are probably even going to be some junior trainers in the gym, or those if those trainers to the west of the city have the same teams, they're going to one or two actually to the west as well. They're going to have one or two Roselia on either side of Mauville, but it just felt right for the grass gym in Hoenn to have a Roselia, and then Breloom just feels so right as the ace. Alternatively, this also could have been a Lombre and a Nuzleaf. Again, just adding more type variety and just, however, I just kind of felt like Lombre and Nuzleaf are two Pokemon that are used quite a bit. Like both together are used quite a bit by other Pokemon. I know there's Collector on the route leading up to Mauville. There's a couple other trainers around that just use those Pokemon a lot. So just, for the novelty of you seeing a Cacnea before we even have a chance to ever catch one. I really like this team. But you can easily switch out Roselia for Nuzleaf or Lombre. And if this was even one gym later, I think something like Tropius could also fit well here. Now for Sinnoh, it's another one of those types in this region where I'm honestly kind of like I think it's kind of funny that there is a gym leader of this type, but because that gym leader was so early in the region, they couldn't quite take full advantage of the type. I love Gardenia. I love her team a lot. I think she's a very good roadblock as a second gym, but there's a lot of really good grass types throughout the region that I think it would have been cool, for there to be a later region grass gym. So I made one that is the eighth gym with Abomasnow, Cherim, Leafeon, Tangrowth. I wanted Abomasnow to be counted as a grass type somewhere on this list, and I didn't feel like Mega Abomasnow and Kalos would have really fit, so I did one here in Sinnoh. It definitely has arguably negative synergy with the rest of her Pokemon, Cherim, Leafeon, and Tangrowth. All much prefer to have the sun up, but one or all of them could also, set up the sun. On Cherim especially would almost immediately try to set up the sun. But I think it's just kind of fun to highlight these Pokemon that are typically always on, a specific, used as a specific type or specific archetype. Like Gengar has only been used on a poison specialist one single time. I think that was recently in Paldea. I don't think there was a time before that when he was considered a poison type. So I think it'd be very cool if Abomasnow is considered a grass type here. It's a little unfortunate that I didn't really feel like any of the other grass types that were other types could work here outside of Cherim, Leafeon, Tangrowth, because so they're just all pure grass. But like plant form Wormadam, that's not eighth gym worthy. Uh, Even like Tropius, who they added in Platinum, also didn't really feel like that should be eighth gym. So yeah, I think I like this team quite a bit. I I definitely think it'll be a probably a better team if Abomasnow were switched out for someone like Tropius, but because it could also have benefits from the sun, but just the novelty of having Abomasnow be a grass type is something I really liked here. But I did also create a team that is a little earlier, this being the third gym with Carnivine, Wormadam, and Leafeon. Carnivine is one of the Pokemon that I think people think about the least. It's kind of a meme that Lumineon is one of the most forgettable Pokemon, but it's kind of like gained notoriety by being known as forgettable. Whereas Carnivine, I genuinely think, gun to my head, if I were to try and list every single Pokemon, unless I like specifically trained on trying to remember Carnivine, I almost certainly would have forgotten about it. So I think it should be on an actual, gym leader team and feel important that way. Where Madame Plant is really just here to add some variety. It's really not a good Pokemon, especially before a generation where it could learn a Quiver Dance. I don't even think it would be able to learn that by the third gym anyway. But again, just for type variety and just to represent more of the grass types in the region, I put it here. And then Leafeon just makes sense as the ace. Now for Unova, another region that has an eighth gem. For most of these videos, I have an eighth gem for both Sinnoh and Unova. There's a lot of really good Pokemon in those regions. But for this eighth gem here, I have. Oh, that was weird. Sorry. For this eighth gym here, I have Amoonguss, Ferrothorn, Leavanny, Sawsbuck as the ace. I really like this team a lot. I like just the fact that there are so many different types here. They're all have a different secondary type. Um, it is one of those teams that has the ace not have the highest base stat total, but Leavanny and Ferrothorn have a higher base stat total. Amoonguss might actually have higher than Sawsbuck too. I'm not exactly sure. But Sawsbuck, I think, has the stats that matter the most when it comes to being an ace. It is the fastest Pokemon on this team. It has the highest attack stat on this team. So I think it just kind of, for me, kind of fills that gap of, it basically, I feel of these four Pokemon deserves to be the ace the most. Um, but I also, just like with all of these fifth gen gyms I create, I gave him the grass gym to hold to make the first horn leech or whatever, grass TM or grass move it decides to use, make it that much stronger. So yeah, maybe you do knock it down, below, like, 75% of its health, but then it hits you with a gym boosted horn leech and it sucks up, pretty much all the damage it just took. So I dig that a lot. Um, Sawsbuck is also kind of like right in the range of, it's on the lower end, but it's still within the range of where uh other gym leader aces have been in the past, even in Unova. It's around the same base stat total as Jellicent, who is Marlin's ace, and Marlin's team only had three Pokemon, which makes Jellicent feel even weaker. Whereas this team at least has three other Pokemon outside of Sawsbuck. So even if Sawsbuck doesn't necessarily feel the most imposing, Ferrothorn, Leaveney, and even Amoonguss, who has that 100% accurate spore, can kind of, you know, I think, kind of make up for it overall. But I also really like the idea of making a team as if Silent became a gym leader. I kind of wish I did one for Chili as well and for the fire team. Um, but I'm definitely doing this one for him and probably for Cress also in the water video, which should be next. So I made his team Lilligant, Whimsicott, Simisage, again with the grass gym. I do feel a little bad for Maractus. It's kind of like Carnivine, where it's just a single stage, okay stats grass type that people kind of forget about. So I would have liked to put it on this team, either of these teams somewhere. I had originally had it on this eighth gym team and had it actually as the seventh gym instead of Leaveney, but I really like the idea of pulling Leaveney off of Berg's team and putting it here. So I feel a little bad for Maractus, but all of these Pokemon are just better anyway. Um, but yeah, I like the idea of him, actually using the fact that he had that Pansage as his ace in that first gym in Black and White, and then in Black and White 2, he shows back up as an actual full-fledged grass gym. And along with the fully evolved semi-stage, also having the two counterparts of Lilligant and Whimsicott. Now for Kalos, we have one that is the third gym. And before I continue here, I just want to bring up the fact that this Gardener avatar here that I picked, in the Kalos game, he actually only ever uses Corphish. I guess like it help like snip his shrubs or whatever. But very similar to the firefighter class in my fire video from Alola, and where that firefighter actually only ever uses water types. In that instance, I thought it was fun for him to actually, to represent the fire type, even though this guy doesn't actually use any grass types. It's just he just already looks like a grass gym leader, so I went with him. Anyway, we have one that is the third gym with Skiddo, the preview, the first stage of the actual grass gym's ace. That's fair game. Whimsicott, who is now a fairy type, but I wanted to represent the fact that it is a new type now. And then Gourgeist. I was kind of switching between Gourgeist and Trevenant. I'd already made Trevenant the ace of a team in the Ghost video, so I want a little variety within these presentations to so now I actually spotlight Gourgeist as the ace, and I made it large because why not? Maybe this guy just takes care of his garden so well and cultivate a large one. So yeah, I can easily hear an argument for trying to say that Trevenant represents the grass type of the best between the two, and I I could easily, hear that argument, but I don't know. I just think the fact that Gourgeist just feels more like a Pokemon that could come from a garden, and I think that's kind of the lore this guy would go off of. And typically, I would create one that also has a mega evolution associated with it, but the only grass megas are Abomasnow and Venusaur. I already said I didn't really want to do Abomasnow since it very much so is associated with the ice typing, especially since its mega evolution also has snow warning. If it had any other ability, I might think about it, but I didn't really feel like doing that. And then Venusaur, I feel weird about giving gym leader starter Pokemon, so I didn't do that. So I think this is fine. Now for Alola, Alola typically doesn't have gym leaders, so I just kind of, looked at the region as it is now, kind of averaged team strength based on the region itself, and also just kind of where other regions have their gyms. And I decided to go with the fifth gym with Lurantis, Shiinotic, and Sarina. I was kind of going back and forth between this being fourth or fifth. If it were fourth gym, this Lurantis would not have its contrary ability. I think it has Leaf Guard as its other ability. But with it being the fifth gym, especially in Ultra Sun and Moon, where those games are way harder anyway, I think this Lurantis, having ways to boost itself with, I mean, maybe even superpower, um, or you send in a Pokemon with Intimidate, hoping to lower its attack, but actually it raises its attack. I think that would just add a little extra oomph that would make it a fifth gym. Shiinotic is extremely bulky on the special defensive side. Adds a little type variety with that fairy typing. It's not the strongest Pokemon. It has okay special attack and decent HP and really good special bulk, but the rest of its stats aren't very good. So one good poison move will probably take it out. Then you have to deal with Sarina, who is actually pretty good. It has 510 base stat total, which is crazy considering you can get one by level 27 or 28 in the Gen 7 games. It just, as a Steenie, it just has to learn Stomp and then it can just evolve. So, yeah, I think 510 is is a very, very good base stat total for the ace of a fifth gym. So there you go. There were two other Pokemon I was kind of considering, like, oh, maybe making it a seventh or eighth gym with Delmise and Alolan Exeggutor. But I don't know. I had already used a Alolan Exeggutor a couple of other times in the Dragon video, and I definitely wanted to spotlight Sarina here because otherwise Exeggutor would absolutely be the ace of that gym. I probably could have just made a second team, but I don't know. I really wanted. I like Sarina a lot. It's one of my all-time favorite Gen 7 Pokemon, so I wanted to give it the sole spotlight here. Now, Galar. The team I created for Galar admittedly kind of ape off of what Milo does in the base games anyway. It wasn't originally intentional, but like after I made these two teams, I decided to go to Milo's page on Wikipedia and just kind of see what they did for him, just to, get any last minute ideas. And I realized, oh, they actually kind of also did this. That being, uh, well, first I made this the eighth gym, and Milo in the like post game tournament thing where you can rematch him, he has either Appleton or Flapple depending on the game, and then he has Ludicolo or Shiftry to coincide with that since they are also Virgin exclusives. So I also kind of accidentally did that because I think it's a very cool idea. I couldn't pick between Ludicolo or Shiftry, so since I am switching Appleton and Flapple depending on the game, I think it only makes sense for the other Pokemon that has a version exclusive counterpart that is a grass type to also change. So I have Ludicolo or Shiftry. Roserade, since I couldn't use it in the Sinnoh for the Sinnoh pick, I decided to use it here. Delmise, since I didn't use it in the Alola one, and then either Appleton or Flapple. There are a couple of other grass types you could have picked from, but I just think for the eighth gym, this is a very good gym, especially in parallel to the actual eighth gym of standard Galar. I think this is a very good replacement for that. Now Paldea. For all the Paldean teams, I always create at least three different teams to represent the three different ways terrestrialization can be used. The first being one that is of their type, that terrestrializes into their type to make their moves even stronger. One that is of their type that terrestrializes into a different type to either be offensively or defensively good into things that the team is usually weak to, and then one that is not of their type that translates into their type to kind of either represent some kind of theming a la the actual grass gym using Sudowoodo, or have some kind of strategy like with Miss Maggie is having levitate. So now that it's a grass type, it basically has no weaknesses. For the first team, I made it the seventh gym with Brambleghast, Toadscruel, Scovillain, and Arboliva. I could easily hear an argument for this being the eighth gym. That is completely reasonable. The base set total of this is more similar to that of the actual seventh gem, but considering just how much is going on with this team, I could easily hear it be the eighth. But regardless, I like Arboliva being the one that tears into a grass type because of its ability, have the ability to set up the grassy terrain, making its energy balls or whatever grass move even stronger. And then the rest of the Pokemon just, you know, also having just a variety of secondary typings is something I really like. Now for the third gym, we have Bramblin, Dolive, Breloom, and Scovillain, who tears into a water type. It's just something about the fact that with him tearing into a water type, he'll actually be representing all three starter types. He's grass and fire normally, and then he tears into a water type. And I believe, off the top of my head, I believe he's the only Pokemon that can do that. I guess scratch that. That's not actually true. Sorry. There's like you could do I guess a Volcanion tear into a grass or like a Sludicolo tear into a fire, but Scovillain could do that too. He can have stab of all three types, assuming you teach it Terra Blast, which by the third gym, Terra Blast I think is absolutely on the table. Um, but yeah, I think this is completely reasonable for the third gym. Iono typically has four Pokemon in her third gym team anyway. Breloom is about the same, actually a little weaker base set total wise uh than what is that thing's name? Bellybolt. And Scovillain is definitely weaker than Miss Magius anyway. So I think even though Bramblin and Dolliv aren't the most imposing, I do think it overall kind of averages out to be about the same strength wise, especially since she has a Wattrel, which I think you easily could have gotten away with that even being a Kilowattrel. So yeah, I like this team a lot. Lastly, we have the one that tears into a grass type who was not usually a grass type. And this was like the kind of three different aspects went into this. One, it's kind of a hard pick because I really like this Pokemon. Another one is just it was like kind of a joke because it's more so based on just the fact that it is green and can learn Leaf Blade. Um, so, might as well make it a grass type, but also because it can learn Leaf Blade, it actually learned and has a new ability in this gen that makes that move even stronger. I think it only makes sense for a Gallade to now be a grass type. But it is green and it learns Leaf Blade. But because of its sharpness ability, its Terra boosted Leaf Blades will be absolutely devastating. But because it is the eighth gem, I felt it only fair to now bring in Sinistcha and Diplin from the DLC, and also Arboliva. If you feel weird about having DLC Pokemon on like a standard gym leader team, I completely understand that. You could still have Brambleghast, Toadscruel, and or Scoville in here as in replacement for those. But I don't know. I historically for these videos have allowed the some of the DLC to get in where they make sense, and I think it makes sense here. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down below what you thought about any of these teams. Are there any grass types I completely forgot about? Are there any that I made aces that didn't deserve it, or vice versa? Are there any gym positions that you disagree with in general? Do you disagree with my notion that it's weird to give gym leaders starter Pokemon? So I probably should have made a team with Mega Venusaur. Please let give any of your thoughts or criticism or just just any thoughts you have about any of this down below. I love to have a discussion down there. I am very quickly barely towards the end of the series. I believe I only have four more videos in this series to go. And, even as little time I have left, I want to continue improving this series. And I definitely have a lot of ideas for the future after this series is over. So yeah, I hope you all stick around for all future videos to come. So with that, I will see you all next time.